Matt Baer, you're a producer of the film Unbroken, which is about the experiences of World War II veteran Louis Zamperini. You've been involved in this project for quite some time now. When did the process actually start for you trying to get this made into a film?
And it started in 1998, which was the time when I had seen a documentary that was made for CBS Sports that was set in Nagano because that's where the Winter Olympics were being held. And so the documentary was about a 30-minute piece. It was made by a man named Dragan Mihailovic, who is now one of the lead producers of 60 Minutes. And so Dragan had done what I now refer to as the sort of Cliff Notes version of the film, which was that he told the whole story. He had reenacted a number of things, but it was a beautiful documentary about Lou's life. And so, in particular, it had the footage of Lou at 81 years old running the torch back into Nagano, where he had once been held captive. So I saw it and thought, I can't believe that this story has never been told. And so I met Lou and his son-in-law Mick the next day and convinced them that I would be the right producer to be the father of trying to get the film made. There was a interesting coincidence, and at the time I was running the film division of Brillstein Gray Entertainment, and we had a first look deal at Universal. In 1956, Lou wrote his book called Devil at My Heels, and Universal bought the book for Tony Curtis to play Lou. So from 1956 to 1998, they still had maintained the rights to film. So we had to go back to Universal for legal reasons, and our first look deal was there. So the project was reborn. And so from 1998 to 2004, it was a very active project at Universal. 2 scripts were done and went out to directors, but we didn't find the director who was big enough in stature to get Universal to make the movie. It had to be a Spielberg or a Bob Zemeckis, Jim Cameron, somebody who would be able to handle the size of the movie, and we just didn't get a director. And so it came close. The director, Antoine Fuqua, who I had made his first movie, Replacement Killers, and after Antoine had made Training Day, Antoine was much in demand. So Antoine was attached to it for a little bit, but he ended up leaving to go do a Go movie at Disney for Jerry Bruckheimer. So it basically was lay dormant for the remaining years. And the one thing that didn't keep it dormant, though, was that in 2002, we had got a letter from Laura Hillenbrand, we meaning Lou. Laura was interested in writing a book on Lou. What we didn't know was that it would take her 8 years to write Unbroken. And so during those period of time, I took the video and I took the script to every financier and every other studio, seeing if they would be interested in it, and nobody was interested. And so then when the book came out in 2010, Universal bought the book and the project got started again.
Is that sort of, this sort of, long gestation period, is this typical, or was this kind of extraordinary that it took this long to make this? Because the story does seem, particularly well suited for a feature film.
It's extraordinary in terms of the length of time. I mean, it's probably one of the longest in history. There's a Forrest Gump, for example, took a long time to happen. In the case of Unbroken, really, it boils down to Unbroken, the book, becoming a massive bestseller. That really turned the tide in terms of it becoming a reality. I've said this often, which is that every producer has their passion project that they're made fun of for continuing to keep going and why you're still working on that. So every producer has that. But so the odds of a producer's passion project becoming the subject of a best-selling book written by Laura Hillenbrand, they are 1,000,000,000 to 1. But it's still the same story that existed from 1956. It's the way that Laura told the story, the level of research that she had, the details into all of the characters. And she wrote the book so cinematically that it made it undeniable as a film. And you were right to be asking, well, why was it deniable for the 10 years before? And it really wasn't deniable. I mean, it really wasn't being denied because Universal would have made the movie. But rightfully, they were only making the movie if they had the right package together.
This whole thing started, in the 1950s, and then you came on board in 1998, and it took this long. Was there any part of this process where you considered sort of giving up hope and moving on?
I never remotely thought about giving up for 1 second, and because number one, there were a lot of producers over time that were interested in being in my position. But because Lou had chosen me, I was never going to stop because it was an honor, the greatest honor of my career professionally, to be the champion of his story. And then number two, and it's a big number two, is that I knew that the book was going to be coming out. So in those years where the project was getting no traction, there was no interest in it, I knew I had on my shoulder, like a little angel, I had on my shoulder, because Seabiscuit had become a successful movie and a hugely successful book. So I knew that it would re-engage Universal or any studio, because then Laura Hillenbrand had become a brand. So I knew that. So I never stopped because I knew that, but who knew it would take her 8 years to write the book? So it required a lot of patience versus my thinking about giving up.
And after all of those years of work, what was the experience like for you when you were actually seeing the completed film for the first time?
It was about as remarkable as a producer can possibly have, because I had been envisioning what these scenes were going to look like for a long, long time. And so it was very satisfying. It was also satisfying in that Angelina and I were very much in sync with what the film version should be. So as soon as I had my first conversation with Angelina about what her approach to the movie was going to be, I really knew and had a feeling that it was going to match my own, but take it to a significantly higher level, because Angelina is so well regarded that we ended up having the Coen brothers involved in working on the script, and then Roger Deakins shooting the movie, and John Hutman being the production designer, Louise Frogley doing the costumes. So it became a phenomenal crew to bring life to Laura's vision, Angie's vision, my vision. It was a very collective thing. But and also, when I started, Jack O'Connell was 7 years old. So the concept of who was going to be Lou, who was going to be Watanabe, I had various ideas about it, but the timing of the way that everything came together with all of the people being available and these artists being right, Miyavi is a perfect example. So all of those things that Angie brought to the table, they all came together in such a satisfying way. And it was wonderful that Lou was alive to be able to be such an active part of the whole Unbroken experience, from the book coming out he toured all across the United States promoting the book. So he had such a wonderful last lap of his very long life. And so the most satisfying call for me was when the movie was finally green-lit, and I was able to call Lou and say, hey, the movie's finally happening. So when I was watching the movie, all of those things were flooding back into my mind.
Sadly, Louis Zamperini died earlier this year at age 97, as you said, a very long and prolific life. Did he ever get a chance to see any of the film before he passed?
Yeah, it was from the time I started until the time Lou died. Lou was always a part of what was going on. I had shown him every script. He always gave me notes on the script like he was a 93-year-old development executive. And so I still have his development notes on what he liked and what he doesn't like. And then when the film was green-lit, Lou met all of the actors, which was particularly satisfying because the actors had no resources themselves to speak to the other men because they were all gone. So Lou was able to describe to Miyavi and Garrett Hedlund and Donal and Finn, all of the actors, who their real life people were because Lou was the source. And then Lou saw all of the screen tests that were done for the parts, and he saw 10 minutes of footage that was shown at CinemaCon that was mostly the battle of the Superman that is in the beginning, along with some other things. And then when Lou was in the hospital, Angie took her laptop and showed her a lot of the film. So he was so happy with everybody in the film and how it came together. And again, the book's success was so meaningful to him that the film happening was the icing on the cake of a remarkable life for him.
As you mentioned, Jack O'Connell, when this whole process started, he was 7 years old. I mean, if you had started filming then, he might have been able to play his own younger self, sort of like Boyhood.
Yeah, it was. But I mean, again, it's a perfect example, which is that Jack ended up being. I mean, he's tremendous in the film, and he was able to capture who Lou was so perfectly. It's a very accurate portrayal of all the areas of who Lou was.
Yeah, you mentioned you had, over the years, of course, you had thoughts about who else might have been right for the role of Lou, who might have been cast in the role if it had been made earlier. Who were some of those names, if you can say?
Originally, when we started, Nick Cage was attached to play Lou. In 1998, Nick was at the height of his popularity, and Universal would definitely have made the movie with Nick. He was right on the verge of being too old to play the part, and that was also part of the struggle of finding who the right Lou would be, was that you had to have somebody who could be 17 years old and 24 years old. There was no, in 1998, there was no Benjamin Button's ability to be able to, make people young like that. And so, but by the time the development process continued, Nick became too old to play the part. And during the years, whoever the during 1998 to 2004, whoever the young actor was of the moment, we had contemplated doing, Tobey Maguire off of Seabiscuit was somebody who we had talked about, and so any young actor we had talked about, but it wouldn't have mattered because it was entirely about the director. The studio wasn't going to make the movie of this size without a major filmmaker.
And the director ended up being Angelina Jolie, who before this had only directed one other feature film in the Land of Blood and Honey. What were your thoughts when she eventually did come onto the project, and was handling a project of this scope? Was there a concern because she hadn't directed that many films before?
Yeah, I've been asked that question a number of times, and I had no. It didn't enter my mind. There wasn't any concern about it because I wanted a director who was passionate about the story and who was passionate about Lou and who understood that this was a film supposed to be inspiring people. And so Angie's approach to what the material was, that was what mattered most to me, was being able to say, okay, number one, Angelina, it's not like Angelina hasn't been in big, expensive movies before. She's been on the set and worked closely on a lot of larger scale movies than in the Land of Blood and Honey. But if you look at Unbroken on a basic filmmaking terms, its scale is obviously large in many ways, but that becomes issues of special effects and visual effects, and we had a team around that was, as I said earlier, extraordinarily talented to make the setup of what we were doing work visually. But ultimately, this is a performance movie in terms of believing all of the actors that are on that raft and are in that camp. And so many, whether it was Eli Kazan or John Huston, John Ford, they had this saying about how 80% of a director's job is casting. And so Angelina has always had a great eye for casting in the films that she's been in. And so I trusted her implicitly with how she was going to cast the movie, and she did a brilliant job. So, and also the studio wasn't going to allow the movie to tentpole out of control in terms of some mass problem financially, because it wasn't going to happen. This wasn't a movie that would all of a sudden balloon out of control because everything was so well organized. And third, which is half of the movie takes place in a prison camp. So it was really then about making the days and getting the best performances out of people versus being concerned that somehow there would be something that was out of control. So none of us questioned Angie's ability to take on the movie because she's not afraid of anything. She likes the challenges of things and really completely immersed herself in the world.
And even before the film is released, on Christmas, and even before it was starting to be seen, people were thinking about this as a possible awards contender, and it has shown up in some places. Critics' Choice nomination for Best Picture and Best Director, for instance. What's that been like? That part of it, being sort of caught up in the whole award season aspect of how this film is sort of playing to people, both in the industry and critics and all that.
I'll answer the question the way that I know that everybody involved in the film is answering the question, which is that the movie is. We all want the movie to be seen, and for Lou's message of inspiration to be shown to as many people as possible. That's the reason why the movie was made, is being able to say to people, and I say it loosely, which is that if you say to yourself, I had a bad day, and you think about what Lou Zamperini went through, just that nugget of reminder of what people oftentimes have to go through. Now, nobody that I know of had an experience like Lou did from the time he was 18 years old to his mid-20s. Tremendously complicated life. But we want that's what's most important to all of us. And in terms of the awards, obviously, having the movie have awards is a nice thing, but it's not in our control in any way. I think that the movie has a pedigree that lends itself to be considered for awards. And I think that the scope and magnitude of the story, certainly for the Academy, that it lends itself towards acceptance and people liking the film in that way. But it's not an independent movie in terms of what its scale is. I think Whiplash is an incredible movie. I'm a drummer, and so I loved it on that level. But that's a really talented young filmmaker, and so but it's just a different it's a different kind of experience in the movies. Unbroken is in the studio system right now. Unbroken is an unusual thing because it's not a comic book movie, it's not a teen comedy, it's not an inexpensive horror movie. It's a movie that needed the resources of the studio to make it, in terms of being a old-fashioned, in the best sense of the word, story that has a lot of scope and tries to take on an important story. So it's fun to have hopes and wishes for further good things for happening for the film, and I certainly hope they do. But in my mind, really, what I'm most eager about is wanting the film to be seen and appreciated for what it's trying to do.
Well, I just want to congratulate you about the film, about finally getting it made, and about some of the notices you've been receiving this season. And I want to wish you the best of luck with the release and with the rest of the award season.
Thank you very much. I'll be reading the site to see what everybody is saying.
It changes every day. So best of luck, and thank you for talking with me today.
My pleasure. Good to talk to you.